Hello, everybody. For those of you who are joining us from Southeast Asia and Oceania, good morning. And those of you who are dialing in from all over the world, we are very excited to have you and appreciate that you're joining us. Welcome to the Stanford GSB Alumni Panel, featuring alumni from all over the Southeast Asia region. I will begin by sharing a little bit of information as we get going today and what you should expect. So first of all, my name is Stephanie Whitland, and I'm one of the MBA admissions officers at the Stanford GSB, and I'll be moderating the panel this morning. During the next 55 minutes or so, we'll have an opportunity to hear from an incredible group of alums who have taken the time to join you all today and share a little bit about their perspective and their experience at the GSB, and also to answer any questions that you might have. I will kick off the session by asking some questions of the panel, and then I'm also going to take time to moderate the panel and ask questions that all of you have for them. So please be sure to submit your questions via the Q&A box. All right. So for the sake of today's panel, we are focused on the Southeast Asia and Oceania region. But regardless of where you're dialing in from, we know that you will be joining a great community with over 66 countries represented at the GSB, who bring together different cultures, beliefs, ethnicities. There are really a plethora of opportunities that are available to you to really get involved with the community. And we have over 50 student clubs and organizations on campus, including the Asia Student Business Student Association. The GSB Alumni Network is truly global. We have over 60 alumni chapters all over the world, including over 45 outside the US. And the class of 2021 is represented by 43% international students and 47% women, just to give you an idea. All right, so what I'd like to do is start by welcoming our alumni panelists who have generously given their time this morning to be with you. I'm going to turn it over to them to have each of them introduce themselves, and I'm going to go in order of how they appear on the slide. So Atif, you're up first.
Good morning. My name is Atif from Thailand, and I did my dual degree at Stanford GSB class of 2014 and at the Harvard Kennedy School class of 2015. Currently, I'm in energy industry at PTT, which is an energy conglomerate of Thailand. My role is to do BD, business development, and international investment in power business. So would be happy to answer any questions about GSB, about career after GSB in energy, in tech, or my prior experience before GSB, which is investment banking and energy.
Great, thank you so much.
Nice to meet you all.
Thanks. All right, Lizina?
Sure. Hello, everybody. My name is Lizina Rahman. I am MBA class of 2010 and public policy class of 2011. So I actually did a joint degree, both combined at Stanford. Prior to the GSB, I was in investment banking, focused on general industrials. And at, post the GSB, I'm now at IFC. And I focus on infrastructure investment here in Indonesia. And yes, happy to talk about the joint degree programs at the GSB and in general, international development and opportunities to look sort of beyond conventional roles. Thanks very much.
Great, thank you. All right, I'll turn it over to Bo.
Hi, I'm Bo. I'm from Thailand. Prior to GSB, I had a finance degree at Thammasat University here in Thailand. And then I worked in oil and gas and business development. And then after the GSB, now I'm working with Lauren Corporation, which is one of the biggest education company in Thailand, in the role of strategy and business development. I'm happy to talk to you about anything, actually. And because prior to the GSB, I've never had an experience living abroad before. So if anyone want to hear more about that, welcome.
Thank you. All right, we'll turn it over to Nish. Oh, yeah.
Gotta take myself off mute. Good evening, everyone. How's it going? My name's Nish D'Souza, MBA class of 2010. So I was classmates with Lazina. Pre-GSB, I was an engineer in the oil and gas industry in Australia, working for Woodside Petroleum, based out of Perth. So spent some time out at sea, managing underwater projects for them, and also overseeing the construction of subsea equipment around the world. I currently am based in the Philippines, been there for nearly 9 years. I recently started an e-commerce venture with my wife, who's also incidentally GSB class of 2011, focused on the parenting space, and concurrently also advise a regional private equity firm called Creador on their Philippines portfolio. So glad to meet everyone. I'm happy to talk about both an Australian, Southeast Asian perspective of pre-GSB, post-GSB. Spent time now across Singapore, Malaysia, Philippines, and Vietnam. So happy to talk about Southeast Asia more broadly as well.
Great, thank you. All right, and we'll finish up with Richie.
Hi, nice to meet y'all. I'm Richie from the Philippines, class of 2020, so recent grad. I took my undergrad in the Philippines, and my pre-GSB background was a mix of investment management, doing finance focused on Asia equities, and I was a teacher as well, so I sort of have a mix of an education background. Now I'm a co-founder in a startup called Erudify. We basically do education, finance, and education services for both Indonesia and the Philippines. So happy to chat about that or anything a recent GSB grad can offer. Nice to meet y'all.
I'm wondering if any of you have been in any other courses that would be, related to whether you took any of the entrepreneurship courses or design courses. That might be helpful to share too.
I took a class called Venture Capital and Entrepreneurship. So in this class, we learn a lot about how startups in Silicon Valley started their business and what are the issues that they face throughout the years. And then we got to meet a lot of startup founders in the Silicon Valley. And one of our teachers is Eric Schmidt, who come to class every Tuesday. And then at the end of the course, we get to form a group of about 4 people and pitch build on a startup idea, and then pitch to Sand Hill Road VC. They will pair us up with the Sand Hill Road VC to be our advisor, and then they will help us kind of formulate the business model further and help with the pitch and stuff like that. And then at the end of the class, everyone pitched to the teachers and Eric Schmidt. And one of our classmates also got some investments from Eric Schmidt because of this class. So in terms of the resources on startups, and I think mainly what I see that is very different from other schools is because of where we're located, because we're in the Silicon Valley. That's why we got to meet with a lot of people in the area, and it opens a lot of opportunities and for the people, and a lot of my classmates that I have seen there are trying to connect with the people and got some outcome of it.
Yeah, thank you, Bo. It is helpful to note that, you know, Stanford and Silicon Valley essentially grew up together, and we often say that our, you know, borders are virtually porous, and there's a lot of communication and just intersectionality between the two, so that people can get very involved. People come to campus, others get opportunities to get involved. So there's lots there available to you. You'll also notice we put in the chat a link so that you can learn more about the Center for Entrepreneurial Studies. Okay, the next question comes from Reynold. They're considering attending the program without any sponsorship, so self-funded. Can you please share your view taking the MBA at Stanford and then going back to Southeast Asia or the region, considering the lower salary or the economic return? So maybe you can kind of talk about how you made that decision to go back to the region, given just the change in economic factors and financial situation. Lizina?
So yeah, it's I got 3 years out of Stanford, and 3 years that I mostly funded. I think Stanford does have a strong foundation for sort of fellowship applications and the rest. So I myself was about a third beneficiary from that, which really helped. And when it came down to it, I think each person is different, and you know, you can make career choices based on, you know, a plan of how you might be able to pay it off over time. And I think the school has a lot of resources to help you do that. So from that perspective, you know, people might ask the touchy question, you know, is it worth it, or any of those things. I think this is a lifelong commitment going to a school like Stanford, and one of my best friends is sitting on this panel, and you know, that's something that there's no kind of financial value for. Like, we will continue to help each other grow over the next, you know, up to a number of years. So from that perspective, I really value the experience that I had, and very much money was part of picking the next jobs that I would pursue for the first few years after the MBA. So I appreciate that as an issue, and happy to talk about it in detail offline.
Thank you.
Just to add to what Lizina said, you know, I think it also depends on the location you're looking to move back to. So I moved straight back to Singapore with an American power company called the AES Corporation right after business school. And you know, what they offered me was equivalent to what they were offering graduates in the US. So I think, you know, if you're looking to recruit into Singapore, into Hong Kong, you know, sort of some of the bigger regional hubs here, you know, the pay is very competitive. Yeah, it might maybe a little bit less than the US, and of course I'm talking about more traditional corporate roles or finance roles and so on here, but you've also adjusted for taxes, cost of living and so on. And that in turn can also be a very attractive entry point into the region as a whole. So coming in from a Singapore or Hong Kong kind of angle, but then moving from there on, I moved to Vietnam for a year and a half, been in the Philippines for you know, nearly a decade since then. So I think it's how you plan it out as well. What we are seeing though is that even countries like the Philippines now are increasingly more open to taking on foreign talent if you're not you know, Filipino, and paying you know, very good salaries for that you know, external experience you're bringing into the country or into the organization.
Great, thank you. All right. Oh, Richie, go ahead. did you have something?
Oh, sorry. Just to add, I do think on a post-tax adjusted basis, Singapore and Hong Kong might actually be quite on par. I would say the biggest gaps would be in startups, where I think the Valley you can't get the Valley like salaries in Southeast Asia, especially if you go to Indonesia or the Philippines. But I do think, like for me, for example, part of the equation was really the outsized impact we could have on a region that is just beginning to take off. And if you can find a way to position yourself to capture some of that economic upside, then that makes up for sort of the near-term salary bumps.
Great. Thank you so much for adding that.
Yes, and I would like to also add.
Sure.
Yeah, so from the perspective of the salary, I may not be the best person to answer this because I was fully funded by the corporation. However, I would like to second everyone regarding the cost of living in this region as well. That is actually much lower. And even though with the slightly lower salary that everyone has already mentioned, the payback period is actually not so far different from what you would have gotten from living in the US. So I think it also has different pros and cons. You know, if you get maybe a slightly lower or more break-even timeline, you may experience like higher growth, you know, and more dynamics in certain industry that you join. So I think, you know, especially at the GSB, you know, we are also taught to balance the money with also the intrinsic motivation. So I think it also depends on you on how you would find that balance too. So yeah.
Thanks so much. I appreciate that. I think you all have interjected a little bit on that, so that's helpful. Another question that has come up popular in the chat is, how did you approach the career search post-MBA in regards to opportunities within and outside of the US? And I think if I can just have one or two folks who can address that question, and then we can move on.
I'd love to take that because I did I would say sort of a self-search in a sense. And I would say, you know, leveraging the alumni network is just so invaluable. And the thing about the GSB is, while the class size might be a lot smaller than some of our, you know, well-known peers on the East Coast, which also leads to a smaller alumni community globally, the bonds are so much tighter. And, you know, within, you reach out to pretty much any alum, you know, even those who are extremely senior, like could be the president of a corporation for Asia Pacific, for example. And typically you'd get a reply back within 48 hours, you know, and they'd be very willing to help, to have a chat. So I personally leveraged that angle, you know, had introductions through student friends at the time, and then also through alumni. And I think that's been a very valuable resource for especially opportunities outside of the US.
This is Lazina. I think I knew pretty early on that I was probably going to look internationally as well. And I think something that was really helpful was the flexibility the GSB had for extensive sort of internship experiences, whether it's during the school year, during the summers, so things like the GMEX, and sort of just the internship times. I was able to do internships both in the US during the school year, tied to classes. I was able to do an independent study, which was linked to an sort of a 6-month internship in San Francisco. I had 2 internships during both summers I had. These were critical experiences for me to, especially for someone who's looking to branch out of, you know, core investment banking, to explore and really experience different opportunities. And the GSB does a great job of, you know, especially through the JMEX and others, providing that network, as Nish was saying, of potential sort of alumni who are willing to respond to you, as well as just, you know, the experiences that are built into the program. So I'd really leverage that.
I like how you both highlighted that while our the size of the alumni community might be less than some of the peer institutions, the tight-knit collaborative culture is second to none. So, you know, it's really one of those things in terms of identifying who are really invested in you. And I've heard time and time and again that the response that people get from our alumni community is just bar none in terms of really reaching out and being available. So I think that's one of the great and unique aspects of the GSB, which makes us so special. All right, I'm going to move on to another question from Mayank. He is asking, as an international student, what factors did you consider in choosing the Stanford GSB for your MBA program? And did the experience meet your expectations? So if you can think a little bit about what it was that maybe drew you to the program relative to other schools.
I don't want to harp on the same point, but the fact that it was smaller really was a big plus for me, because I mean, I know myself from that perspective. I thrive in smaller communities, and just I knew from hearsay, from understanding the network, that the alumni were very responsive, and I knew that that's also what you're going into this for, to develop that broader community.
Thanks.
I think two things for me, you know, these days there's a lot of focus on rankings and things like that, and people tend to get very caught up in these things, but I think there's something to be said for brand, you know, and I think the Stanford brand in the global business context is really second to none. And then that coupled with the school's sort of genuine focus on social and environmental innovation at the time I applied, you know, I'm sure at this point as well, was also something that I think really spoke to me. So there's really this deeper purpose that people tend to pursue, right? There's this the social mission in a sense, and that can be implemented through business, through startups. You know, doesn't necessarily mean you need to work for a nonprofit in Cambodia, for example. And that traces right back to the application question: what matters most to you and why? You know, I mean, Stanford really wants to understand what makes you tick. So I think that's something that really spoke to me during the application process.
Thank you.
Yeah, as for me, at that time, I was actually looking for alternatives or ways to improve my leadership ability. And it boils down to two kind of routes: whether to continue working in the management role for a few more years, or to find some sort of leadership camp. And, you know, after attending a session like this and talking to a bunch of alumni who went to Stanford GSB, I know it was the right choice, particularly because of the experience, the focus on the experiential learning that Stanford GSB provides. For example, I think some of our panels has already mentioned about the MGE class, where we role play with the professors on the difficult situations, and that actually does bring not only the experience portion, but also the feedbacks that you would get from your classmates on how you would deal with this type of difficult situations. Also, I think Bo mentioned about the leadership lab, you know, where we get film and, you know, kind of go back and observe how we negotiate or discuss on topics with our classmates. And that actually bring lights to me in terms of leadership development as well, because sometimes you would think of yourself in certain things, but when you watch the video, you realize that there's a gap, and that's when you have the light bulb that you know what you need to improve in terms of leadership development. And definitely, I think my experience exceed the expectation before I joined. So it is probably the best investment I had in terms of education for me.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to turn to another question. I think Atif, you can definitely add to this, but I encourage anyone else to respond as well, just because I know you mentioned it in your intro. So one of the candidates on here is asking a question regarding the global experience. So during your time at the GSB, what global coursework did you find useful for your experiences now that you're in Southeast Asia? Or did you use your global experience, whether it was the global seminars, the GMIX, the study trips in Southeast Asia, or did you explore another part of the world? So maybe you can talk a little bit about what the expectations are around that too.
Sure, I think in this, especially in this era, I think most of us would agree that having an experience in the global context would help in terms of doing business or even nonprofit social enterprise. So what I did was that I actually chose the areas that I have very minimal experience in. For example, like Mexico, it's kind of like a very foreign territory for me. The food is different from, and I chose Japan as well because Japan, even though it's in Asia, it still has this kind of uniqueness about them in doing business, and the culture, even the culture of doing business is different in terms of they might have more seniority. You have to always kind of listen to your boss, so that kind of things. And also, like another one that the internship that I did was in Jordan. Also provides me with very valuable experience in terms of how to negotiate with people from that region that I might not have much experience before the GSB. So all this experience that kind of come with the global experience requirement actually makes me a more, I guess I would say, whole as a now an M&A lead for international business for PTT, which is the Thai National Energy Company. So yeah, I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, great.
I like to add on that. So I did a lot of this international requirement as well. So I did the GMIX in Mexico City, and also did 2 study trips to Iceland and Sweden, and also another one in India. And also I was also a co-president of Stanford Tsinghua exchange program, which takes place around Thanksgiving time. So for this program, actually, you just work with a peer from, like, your peers from Tsinghua on a project, and then you go to China for 2 weeks, and then they also come to the Bay Area for 2 weeks as well. So you get to know more people in China, and like got to know their perspective, and also working on the project, which is China focused. So that's really helpful. And I also did an internship in South Korea, in Samsung. So all this, I think, I feel like I have graduated from being like just a Thai citizen into a global citizen, because I embrace so much of an international mindset, and feel like I know how to react in each situation when I'm in a whatever region. I feel like I can get along with them and trying to understand their perspective and act accordingly. I think this is really important because after the GSB, I also did a lot of international transactions and have to deal with people from all around the world. I think kind of from assessing myself, it really makes a big difference on that.
Thank you. I want to pose a question to Richie about career pivoting, since I believe that's something that you did. Is there anything you can share with the audience about how, like, either career resources you use to make that happen for you?
Yeah, quite a lot. I go to the career office sort of once a month just to like sort of help myself figure out what I want to do. And so I think GSB offers a lot of resources, from career exploration to just figuring out what in the world you want to do, and then interviewing and prepping for it. So I do think from the end to end, I've utilized that quite well, and the people from the CMC will attest to it. But beyond that, the alumni network that that the GSB has, and I do think there are mentoring networks available. We have databases that you can look up alumni, and I think those are the best ways I've found that have been quite helpful for me in sort of getting up to speed with the industry that I want to pivot into.
Okay. Great, thank you. I'm going to take a couple more questions and then I'll turn it back over. We generally go 45 minutes past. We're doing a little bit longer today, but if any of you have to jump off, please just let me know and feel free to do so when we get to the 45-minute mark. Can you all kind of talk about, or at least a couple of you, what that alumni community looks like in Southeast Asia and what people might be expected to have available to them after returning from the GSB? Or
yes, I can talk about Thailand. You know, I think I also echo what Stephanie mentioned earlier, that it's all about quality over quantity. We do have a smaller alumni, you know, due to the smaller class size of Stanford. Some people might see that as a weakness. However, I think it could actually be the strength, because it makes the alumni community much more tight-knit. And when you know someone at a deeper level, it means that they are also more invested in each other as well. So I think in terms of alumni quality in Thailand, you know, we have people come back and, you know, spread across different industries, tech, energy, education. So I think I found that very, very useful. So and very helpful. Very helpful for my career advice or career search. So I think that tight-knit community, the tight-knit alumni community, does play an important role for my career.
thank you.
Yeah, echoing that. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry, you go first, Richie.
Oh yeah, sorry. Echoing that, I do think like every mentor I've had, you know, a lot of the GSBers from many different years and decades even really take time to mentor me, and that's really proof of, you know, how deep the relationships go. I've known Nish for 3 years now, and we've kept in touch ever since, and I think that's a testament to how just strong and tight of the network you'll have once you sort of get into the GSB.
Yes, you want to?
Yeah, I could just add a Philippine perspective. You know, I think the Stanford community in the Philippines is very tight, very vibrant, and not just with respect to the GSB, but you know, more broadly across different schools. It's probably a couple of hundred alums, but in terms of those who are probably the most active, maybe about 30 to 40. But you know, we've got our own Viber group going. We've got our mailing list. There's events held at least once every quarter, and everyone is extremely supportive. And so that camaraderie that you build on in school definitely translates to the alumni network. Like, you meet any alum anywhere in the world, and you feel the sense of kinship, right? Almost like you're meeting family. And I think that's something that's really very difficult to quantify when you're thinking about investing in a degree at a GSB.
Very nice.
From a quick regional perspective, the Indonesia alumni community is pretty, it's pretty small. But as Nish said, we also have our own sort of expanded mailing list, which is pretty active, to be honest, on WhatsApp, talking about, you know, it's just very much about sharing information, and everyone's kind of looking to just, we have pretty interesting debates, and because of the, you know, the origin or the context for some of us, it's like we have debates about, you know, the power sector policies here, transport, et cetera. It's pretty fun from that perspective. I also want to highlight that Singapore serves as a regional hub, so they actually have a number of events every month. And I mean, previously it was, you know, if you're flying through Singapore, anyone can kind of just, you know, attend and sign up. And now it's like they're doing a little bit more webinar style, et cetera, but it's still a huge resource for us and an ability for us to connect across the region.
Great, thank you. One more question that caught my eye that I thought was interesting. I'd love to hear some of your perspectives. With so many amazing classmates, did you ever experience imposter syndrome? And if so, how did you cope?
I think we're probably still experiencing it.
Yeah, exactly.
All the time.
You know, our former dean used to say at the intro orientation to all incoming first-year students that, you know, look to your left and your right, and you'll say to yourself, how did I get in, right? All these amazing people next to you. And then would say, by the end of this year, you'll look to your left or your right, and you'll say, how did these people get in? So there's a little bit of a mindset shift that might happen too. But yes, you are surrounded by some incredible classmates, but also very humble. I think one of the things that's so wonderful about the community is that you learn and grow from one another, and you're open to that.
I will say that,
Yeah,
you know,
definitely.
Sorry, I was going to say,
Nisha.
coming in as an international student, you're, you know, a lot of the class points or the marks you get are based on class participation, right? I mean, you're really learning so much from just debates and discussions in the classroom with your classmates, with the professor. And it may, especially given an Asian or even to some extent an Australian perspective, not be as natural to stick your hand up and say, hey, you know, I'd like to push back on that point that you just said, Lazina, right? When you're coming from an international background, whereas, you know, a lot of the Americans, many of whom went to liberal arts colleges, have been sort of debating and critiquing and engaging in these kind of approaches for years, right? Even since high school. So I think that is something that initially you feel a little bit out of your depth, but I think very fast you're pushed to kind of contribute and stick your hand up and be more assertive. And I thought that was a very valuable part of personal development at the GSB, and just coming out a more confident, assertive person.
Ati?
Yeah, I definitely second that. And also, you know, I actually did felt that imposter syndrome a little bit, you know, who would not, right? Because you would be surrounded by, for example, my classmate, he was an engineer at NASA who built this robot that land on Mars. And that's a guy who, you know, built his own startup, sold it for several $100 million before he joined GSB. For like 5 or 6 years before he joined the GSB, for example. But after going there, you know, and get to meet them, they're all super nice people. And I come to realize that it's actually, the GSB is actually kind of like the Avengers. You know, sorry about the superhero comparison, but you know, if in Avengers, right, you would find someone like Captain America, who'd be really good and have really good leadership. But another guy who, like, for example, like Hawkeye, he would be really good at using arrows. So I come to realize that everyone has their own strength. And that actually brings the depth of discussion or learning to the community. So they're good at their own things, you know, they're good at their own expertise. And that's what is so beautiful about going to the place like the GSB for me.
Great, thank you. All right, I'm looking at the clock. We've got about 5 minutes left. And one of the questions I always like to end with has also come up in the Q&A by a couple of folks and really relates to this theme around, you know, if you could go back and speak to yourself as you were applying to this Stanford, what advice would you give, or in general, just what advice might you give your pre-GSB self? So if each of you want to just give a couple of blurbs, I'll start with Lizina, not to put you on the spot, but if you can think of something, and then I'll go around to the rest of the group and just get your thoughts.
You know, Nish mentioned the fact that the essay, you know, what matters most to you and why. I think I was like emotionally traumatized trying to like get the right answer to that and trying to figure out what the right answer would be. And then eventually the right answer is whatever really authentically matters to you. And just, you know, advice I would give to myself is just like, trust your instincts, trust what you care about. And like, I guess one of the anthems of the GSB is kind of like lead with your heart, right? You just have to be out there and authentic, and that's what's going to get you the truest answer.
Thank you. I'm going to hand it over to Nish. Hopefully you've had some chance to think about it.
Yeah, so, you know, I actually very happy with my GSB experience and the time I spent there. I think a priority for me coming in was really getting to know classmates in the years above, the years below, because it tends to otherwise be quite a bubble, right? You're sort of surrounded by classmates in your year. So I was involved with a lot of extracurricular stuff, you know, GSB show, emceeing, GSB Unplugged, which these are the flagship sort of campus and theater events, you know, extracurricular clubs, the Energy Club, Admit Weekend, and so on. But you know, looking back now, I think the one area where that philosophy could have been extended a bit was maybe taking a class or two across the street, as they say at Stanford. So specifically the design school, because I think the design thinking is just such a different way of approaching problems versus the more business foundation that we have. And I think it's something to be cognizant of, that when you go to the GSB, you go to Stanford, you're not just going to a great business school, you're going to an institution that's amongst the top in the world for every field, you know. So try to, while things are very busy, try to maybe carve out a little bit of time to make most of one or two of the opportunities in other schools on campus.
Thank you. Thank you. Richie, do you want to
Yeah.
Sure, I can do it. I would say, like, looking back at some of the busy 2 years I've had, and I was telling someone that it's been much busier than my finance days, but I would have lived more deliberately with the way I chose to spend my time at the GSB in terms of the friendships I fostered and the activities I've taken. Part of it is when you come into the GSB, you think you have to do every single thing in front of you, and there's just not enough time to do it, and that's when sort of you get stressed out, because how do you do all these amazing things and meet all these amazing people? But I think the most value I've gotten was, you know, the handful of friends I've really fostered, very meaningful friendships that I've had that I know will last me, you know, beyond the GSB and many, many decades to come. And that, I think that's really the most important thing is know like what you want out of the experience and just go for it when you're there.
Thank you. All right, I'll jump over to Bo if you can share something.
I would echo Rishi. I think, like, to everyone, prioritizing is a key here, because going to business school is like drinking from a fire hose. Like, it's so mouthful. Like, you kind of, like, each day just go by without you noticing. Like, there's so many things to do, like social, academics. You have to foster friendship with your friends, and there are clubs and activities. So prioritizing is a key. I feel like I always compare going to the GSB as like going shopping in a department store. Like, you have so many, there's so many things, like whatever you want is there, but you just have to know what you want and go there and get it. Otherwise, you're gonna be like so overwhelmed, and this is how you can maximize your experience, by knowing exactly what you want.
Okay, thank you. And we'll round out with you, Atif. We started with you, and let's have anything else.
Sure. Actually, I'll also echo with all the panels today, and especially on the last question regarding the because the GSB is such a wonderful place. Anything that you would like to learn more, you would probably be able to learn more. And that's actually a term that I remember in the first year called FOMO, or fear of missing out. I think many of the freshmen has experienced that, partly because they want to kind of get almost 100% of everything that is offered by the GSB. I was one of that student, and looking back, probably if I were to do a little bit more research about what were to offer at the GSB, what were to offer at the Stanford University as a whole, I might be able to prioritize that better, and also probably be more focused on what I really needed for my career aspiration. So just to summarize it up, for that, is that I think everyone has their own strength, and they know already what they want to improve. So if they find out and with what GSB has to offer, then they will probably have a very fruitful experience for 2 years. Yeah.
So what I just want to end on is we do have a cornerstone on one of our buildings at the GSB, which states the following: dedicated to the things that haven't happened yet and the people who are about to dream them up. And I hope today that you got excited about what the GSB has to offer for you. I also want to thank you all for taking the time to be here. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. We would love to connect with you. There are many other ways in which you can get engaged with the community through our information sessions, panels like what we saw today. We also host them for diversity and women's and other regions. So we encourage you to take advantage of that. And thank you all again today for your time. And to all of the panelists that are here, thank you so much for sharing some time in your day. I certainly appreciate it. And I'm sure many of the folks online today did as well. So have a great morning or evening, wherever you happen to be in the world. Bye.
All the best, everyone.
Yeah, thank you. It's my pleasure as well.
Thank you.